It's Monday. In case you didn't know, this is Monday. We got a Heroes Breakfast this Friday. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Hey, everyone. So that is a green light for you veterans. Want to come out and join us, get free breakfast. We'll be doing that. The doors do open at 6 o'clock. Delta Roofing, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, the Warriors Journey, Scramblers, and all of you at our St. George's Donuts drive we did a couple of months ago. That come by, get a donut, make a donation. That's the St. George's on National and Battlefield. Buying those breakfasts for veterans, and we've, been doing it for over a decade. It's insane to think about that. Over a decade. How many breakfasts, how many veterans that is, but it's such a great time, and we appreciate those of you who help, those of you who join us, and that will be coming up on Friday. Let's see, do we have any? There's a local for less coming up for Five Guys. For just $15, you can get a $30 gift certificate. That will launch at KSGF.com 10 a.m. on Friday. And I'll go ahead and mention as well, you can get registered to win Teacher's Lounge Pizza Party. Enough with kids winning pizza parties in school. They always have all the fun, and then the teachers left to clean it all up. This is with Godfather's Pizza. You can sign up at KSGF.com, and your school or your kid's school or your wife, husband, they work at the school, and it's going to be for the Teacher's Lounge only. The winner will receive pizzas for a pizza party from Godfather's Pizza. That, too, is at KSGF.com. Last week we had a lot of signups. I had to laugh because we did the Jerry Seinfeld ticket giveaways, and he had two showings at Juanita K on Saturday, 5 and 8 p.m. I was in attendance at the 5 p.m., and I learned subsequent to that, as we had made dinner reservations afterwards, that a lot of people I know were also there, because I was seeing that Chef Tiny from Retro Metro had a pic posted. A gal we've had on the program before because of a COVID thing and a lawsuit with one of the hospitals. She was there. She also posted that it was her whose cell phone went off during the performance, and she wanted to crawl in a hole. She was so mad at herself that happened. A girl that I don't think I've talked to since a class reunion, but I graduated with, I saw she had posted there. Oh, and then when we were waiting to get out of the parking garage, because I paid the absurd $20 to park right there behind 180K, and I get this text message from another friend of mine saying, I think you're supposed to go the other way. And I'm like, where are you? And she's like, we're like right next to you. And I literally just in this truck, you could touch it, with somebody else I knew. There were a lot of people out for that.
Yeah, was it good?
It was a really good show. Do you know what cracks me up, though, and this kills me about the parking situation there? And I don't know. This past summer, I was in Kansas City a lot, up at the KU Medical Center, because of a family thing. But I was in and out of the parking garage quite often. And it's a very automated system. It works very nicely. You get your ticket, and then once you're inside the KU Medical Center, you can validate it if you want. They take a certain amount off. I forget exactly how much it is. But then on the way out, before you get to like the entry to each level, there is an automated machine that you can just go ahead and pay right there before you even get to your car. And you can use Apple Pay. It takes 10 seconds maybe. You just swipe your thing, and then you boom, 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 done. And then whenever you get up to where the arm lifts and you're on your way out, then you just scan your ticket. So it's all very streamlined. I mean, I don't know, in my mind, universities should sort of be at least in line with the curve. They still have people taking only cash as you enter. It's like, to me, the same level of use of technology and being up to date as somebody who is charging people to drive or to park in their driveway when there's some big event next door. You know what I mean? Where they just have people stand out there and they're like, oh, do you? And I guess if you don't have cash on you, then you're just screwed. Or, I mean, you can find parking elsewhere, but it just kills me that, like, in this day and age, with the advancements and the ability to pay for so many things. And part of the reason is just because of how many people you have going in and out at a single time, and it just seems like that way takes longer to not be able to even pay in advance or something. I don't know. It just it surprised me, though I knew it was that way. They still just have people taking cash there. it almost seems shady. Like, are you people really here? Like, do you really work here on the campus, or are
They
you just
probably
some
don't.
random people who had
They
bank
yeah,
bags
they
and
just
you're
got
like
like a vest at Walmart.
$20?
That's crazy.
Well, it was filled.
It sounds like it was a good
It's just like
show.
it was. It was a really great show. I thought it was fantastic. The opening act was pretty good. A lot of times those are. It was a low key guy. He was great. And then what I thought was a great way for Jerry Seinfeld to come out on stage is you think in your mind, and I don't know. This is the very first stand up comedian I've ever seen in person, which I realized the other day, and that just seems like a weird thing. But in my mind after the opening act, and then there might be a pause, and then some sort of announcement or some sort of big introduction before the opening act even got off stage. Jerry Seinfeld comes running out like really quickly, straight to the microphone, and it caught you off guard a bit. And they're hey, he's already here. But it was a really good show. I thought it was.
Oh,
I
that's
didn't hear it.
awesome.
Yeah, it was great. But incidentally, since I'm just going to bore you with my weekend, if you have not been to Ariake, it is fantastic.
I think one of our other
It is
coworkers was
fantastic.
talking about that a couple weeks ago.
Well, and I had a conversation Friday with someone who said, if you've not been there, it's really great. I've only heard wonderful things about it, and it is. Now, it's pricey. If you're one of those people that all you want is a good deal, which I love a good deal, you're probably going to be like, well, this is too expensive. But if you are wanting to have an experience, a dinner experience, then I'm telling you, it is total date night. You cannot go wrong with it. They're open for lunch now as well. I don't know how long that's been, but we kept meaning to go there, and we just had not made it over there. And we were going to do our traditional, place that we normally go. But it's like, no, let's go to Ariake. We keep saying we're going to go there. We never go there. And so we went there. It was fantastic. Service was great. Cut above. I do highly recommend it. All right. A lot of interesting stuff happened Friday even, but over the weekend as well. This great exchange between Donald Trump and the governor of Maine. Did I send you this? Did you
Yes,
see
actually,
this?
I played this on my show.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
All right. You're welcome. I'll play it coming up. The one thing that just killed me, I'm thinking to myself, does this governor of Maine not know who Donald Trump is? Like, you are really going to get into this spat? It's like, in my mind, a person who goes on Judge Judy and decides to mouth her. Like, have you not watched this show before?
Well, and her statement afterwards, we're not going to be bullied.
Like, oh my gosh, what are you? And the thing this is what kills me. What are you fighting over? This is the executive order. It's regarding the executive order that Trump signed saying you will not receive federal dollars if you force girls to take showers with boys who identify as girls, if you force them to compete against boys. And there are a couple of states led by Democrats that are just saying, no, girls take a back seat. Boys rule, girls drool, and this is the way that it is. And she is one of and of course he just noted to her, and we'll play this audio. Well, then you're going to lose federal funding. And she's like, well, I'll take you to court. And he's like, okay. I like, what world are you living in, woman? If this were some noble fight in which 70 to 80% of Americans were on your side, then I could understand it. But even a majority of Democrats are against this stuff. It is insane, this fight that Democrats are deciding this is the hill they want to die on, because it really does seem almost even more than Doge, as if this transgender thing, that they just are so out of their minds on it. It's crazy. So that audio coming up. Also, Marco Rubio, fantastic audio revealing a huge lie that Zelensky told him and J.D. Vance in an interview with Catherine Herridge, Marco Rubio, on Friday, or it was revealed Friday, or aired Friday, at least the clip of it. So just a lot coming up this morning. Darren Chappell is also going to join us. What is that? 7:30?
Yes, 7:30.
And he wanted specifically to talk about an issue we talked a little bit about on Friday, and it has to do with the legislation and the stuff that's in Roundup, and he wanted to come on and just make sure people had a better understanding of what all that is about, because it is quite contentious, and as is often the case, sometimes people don't get the full story because they're getting information off the internet and social media, and so he wanted to come in. He'll be doing that after 7:30. Weather in a moment. Much nicer week than last week. Now the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Cullerton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 63. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 36. For your Tuesday, sunny with a high near 65. And on Wednesday we'll see a slight chance for rain in the afternoon and then cloudy skies with a high near 60.
Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you, the Pyramid Roofing Company. The weather is going to be really, really nice this week. And if you have noticed with all of this melting snow, maybe some yellowing on your ceiling, maybe some drips, maybe your gutters aren't keeping up, now is literally the time to call Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they offer free roof inspections, so you're not out anything whenever you give them a call. And the good thing about the free roof inspections is they do a very thorough one. They take tons of photos and videos so you can see exactly what they see. And then they'll get you on the schedule. And they're going to be upfront and honest with you about the work that needs to be done. Maybe you're in a situation where you don't need a whole new roof, maybe just a simple roof repair. Either way, like I said, the Pyramid team, they're going to be upfront and honest about the work that needs to be done, and then they'll get you on the books. It's as simple as that. So if it is time to have the Pyramid team out at your home, go ahead and schedule that appointment with Josh today. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Pyramid Roofing Company talking text line. Sarah, loving the Saturday show.
Hey,
Great
thanks.
content and commentary.
Every Saturday morning, 10 a.m., or you can listen Spotify or wherever else you get your podcasts.
Boom.
Yeah.
Shakalaka. There was an event on, I think this was Friday, that the back and forth began, and
Yes.
there was an event in which the president had in audience a number of different governors, and he was talking about just a number of things that he had been doing and mentioned the executive order in which federal funding will be withheld from schools that force girls to lose slots in competitions out to boys who identify as girls, have to shower with boys if the boys just declare I'm a girl, and bathrooms. So I mean, we know what it is that they are continuing to force girls and women in this country to go through, and Trump has stepped in order to bring sanity back and to protect girls from just having to live in this insane world that the Democrats have created. And in the comments, he's noting that Maine, as a Democrat female governor, throwing fellow females under the bus, and that she has just said, no, we're going to continue to force girls. Maine is a boy's state, man declares he's a girl, he gets to do what he wants to do. And this is, so Trump begins to talk about this and ask, is the governor of Maine here? And this is the exchange that took place.
The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way, that's good. But I understand Maine Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Are you not going to comply with it? We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding. Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor, because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
I love that he adds at the end. But I just don't know if I can think of anything more dumb and anti-female to decide to battle Trump over. I mean, she's not the only one. This is just an amazing thing to me that of all the issues in which most people agree, I don't believe there is any issue in which you have such bipartisanship within the American people. A majority of Democrats, majority of independents, majority of Republicans do not want girls to go back decades and decades to where men get the call the shots. And that if women have a problem with it, they should seek out counseling. That's what many of them have been told, that they're just hysterical, that there's something wrong with them, not the guy who wants to pretend to be a woman so he can shower with them or kick them out of first, second, third place when it comes to competitions. No, you, sweetheart, are the problem. It's just mind-boggling to me that this is what they want to fight Trump over. It must truly be Trump derangement syndrome in play here. This is just total and complete insanity. There's obviously the ongoing looking back on, why did Kamala Harris lose? And one of the areas in which it was noted, particularly with people of color, that Trump did much better was because Kamala Harris was not more proactive in coming out against this stuff. She just kind of kept quiet on it. And when there in a number of different states, the Trump campaign released those ads in which Kamala Harris was talking about forcing taxpayers to pay for sex change operations for criminals in this country who are in prisons, and just really playing off this vast majority of Americans being against that sort of thing. And a lot of people in the Democrat Party looked back on the unwillingness to, at the very least, backtrack just a little bit on the extremism they have when it comes to this issue, as why it was that so many people who maybe were just sort of up in the air, I don't like Trump, but I don't know about Kamala, she's, quote, untested. Of course, we know that wasn't the case, but this is the way the media portrayed her. And then all the pomp and circumstance and the hoopla over how wonderful she is, and all of the marketing that was done and all of the money that was spent far beyond what the Trump campaign spent, that when it came down to it for a lot of people, that was really what signaled to them the Democrat Party's just crazy. And this particularly impacted a lot of the suburban moms that the Republicans were so worried about losing because Trump says mean things. Well, Trump ended up being in a position because of the Democrats' extremism to defend girls, to defend women. And this is another one of those situations that some might call an unforced error, that the Democrats, because they've doubled down on this, they have allowed Trump, yet again, another just no-brainer. I mean, it's just such an easy win for him. And talk about not learning your lesson. Have this idiot governor of Maine say that she will fight to continue to force girls into these horrific situations. It's crazy. I would note, just as a reminder, for those who want to portray this as, Trump is going to withhold educational dollars over this issue as if he's the bad guy here. Let's not forget Joe Biden signed an executive order that told schools if you don't force girls into these situations, they will deny poor kids lunch money and breakfast money. That the funding for breakfast and lunch for underprivileged kids would be denied. So specifically targeting poor kids. They would deny that money unless the schools, stopped recognizing the reality of boy and girl and started forcing girls to shower with boys and to compete against boys. In fact, this is why the Springfield School District voted in favor of going Biden's way. Of course, the liberal left has a majority on the school board, so they went ahead and complied with this. And I just bring that up because one of the things that the left loves to do and the media loves to do is, talk about, and I'm sure the local stories in Maine, what this will mean for your child's education. This is how far Trump is willing to go for this, quote, political issue. Well, Biden was denying hungry kids food on this particular issue, but he was on the side of the extreme minority in the country, not the majority of Americans. KSGF.com, of course, you can stream us there. Coming up, Local for Less Ozarks this Friday, 10 a.m. Five Guys for just $15. You can get a $30 gift certificate for Five Guys handcrafted burgers and fries, 10 a.m. on Friday. And Friday also will be a Heroes Breakfast. So we'll be doing breakfast for veterans at Scramblers. Doors open at 6 a.m. this Friday.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 63. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 36. For your Tuesday, sunny with a high near 65. And looking ahead to Wednesday, we'll see a slight chance for rain in the afternoon, and then cloudy skies with a high near 60.
Pyramid Roofing Company talk at text line 447 KSGF. We go to Walter. Welcome to the program, Walter.
Good. You were talking about your parking situation at Juanita K.
Oh, yeah.
Are you familiar with the 3 parking garages that the city built and the story about those?
Well, by the theater downtown being one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's 2 of them. There's
yeah.
2 by the theater. One south of the theater, one east of the theater, and then the one at the ballpark. The one south of the theater has the automatic machines that you throw your coins into, and you can park there, but they've never been turned on. They've never earned a dime. The machines have sat there. They probably don't work anymore, but they've never been turned on. Then the one by the ballpark, they sold that one, you know. Not only did they sell it for less than we built it for, they sold it for $1 million or $2 million less than we owed on it. This is the reason you don't let government do things that private industry can do.
None of this surprises me. I've tried to figure out. I mentioned earlier the parking garage behind Juanita K on the MSU campus, and we had a lot of really big international shows. I mean, there Jerry Seinfeld was there on Saturday, had a couple of different performances, and just how it's funny because in this day and age with advanced technology and a lot of parking garages, just how they utilize technology. When you pull up to the parking garage behind Juanita K, there's just these people taking cash, $20 cash, and you can't blame somebody if they're like, wait a minute, are these people legit, or are these just a couple of guys with bank bags that are, because it just seems so behind the times. I don't know. Maybe they figure that that's actually faster somehow. With how people can be. I've tried to figure out if there's other than it's government and how slow government can be when it comes to efficiency and keeping up with the advanced technology. Unless it's voting, for whatever reason, they love to try every new type of fangled electronic voting possible. But outside of that, and I thought, well, because how sometimes people can be with technology and. Let's be honest, particularly older people, sometimes you get flummoxed and then you have a line of cars behind you, and how frustrating that could be. I guess you could have one lane because each side has 2 lanes. I guess you'd call them lanes, two different, wands or whatever, gates. They don't really have gates there, but you know what I'm saying. So I guess you could have one on each side that is electronic and then the other a person taking cash. But it's just, I don't know, in this day and age where it's cash only and so often things are the opposite, no cash, it's just, I don't know, it stands out to me. I'm not saying it's wrong or anything. It's just, I find it a little bit humorous, and it's just out of sync with so much of how we do things today. Maybe it's better. I don't know. I played audio earlier of this Democrat governor of Maine. The one issue that the vast majority of Americans are on the same side of, it's protecting girls from having to compete against boys in sports, having to take showers with boys, and we know the whole deal. And this came up because Trump was talking about how Maine was going to defy this and is defying it. In fact, last weekend, the first weekend after the executive order, a boy who was not ever able to really medal as a pole vaulter up and decided, well, I'm going to compete against girls. And then all of a sudden he's beating records and he's knocking girls out of first place. And then, what would be first becomes second. What would be second becomes third. And this is the entire point. And it's not about transgenders. It's about girls. This is why it's the girls that always lose. This door does not swing the other way. We do not have stories of boys that are told to go to counselors because they don't want to shower with girls. We are not dealing with boys who lose out scholarships on sports or slots on teams because of a girl who identifies as a boy and competes against them. Let's be realistic about who the victim always is in this. It's pretty funny that the left, if you have a disproportionate high number of people of color that come in contact with law enforcement, the default in their assessment is that means law enforcement is racist. But when virtually every single time, the victim in a situation of competing against or with a transgender against a transgender, it's always every time it's a girl that is suffering, they don't see that as a girl's issue. They don't see that as somehow anti-girl, anti-female. They dismiss it as, well, there's no real proof. There's no study, when in fact there are studies. In fact, one done by, of all places, the United Nations, about how completely not only unfair, but unsafe it is to girls to be forced to continue to compete against boys. You have the Washington State, obviously very blue. The state superintendent of public instruction, Chris Rakedahl, spoke in defense of boys competing in girls' sports in an address on Thursday, claiming that it's inaccurate to say there are only two genders, biologically at that. You can get into arguably this sort of gray area of nuance if you're like, well, now when we're talking about gender, we're not talking about biology. See, gender is something different. There are people that try to argue down that path. This guy is saying biologically, there's no difference whatsoever between a boy and a girl. Every human being's exactly the same. That there's no difference. Quote, "It is quite simply inaccurate to say biologically that there are only boys and there are only girls. There's a continuum. There's a science to this. There are children who are born intersex. There are children whose hormones and whose chromosomes are not consistent with their sex at birth. Now, there are anomalies. We've heard of these anomalies occurring, but that doesn't mean that there aren't two genders. There are anomalies in which babies are born without limbs. That does not mean that it is inaccurate to note that people have two legs. There are oftentimes children that are born blind. That does not mean it's inaccurate to say that human beings have eyes in which they can see. So simply because there are medical anomalies in which children are sometimes born and they're intersex or they're, have got some sort of anomaly about them physically or biologically, that does not automatically mean that there are no two genders. Democrat Governor Tony Evers, this is in Wisconsin, is backing a bill replacing the word mother with inseminated person. This is what you are now in Wisconsin in the eyes of the Democrats. You are an inseminated person.
Well, at least it's better than a birthing pod.
I mean, I don't know.
It's unbelievable. These people.
Could
you insult women anymore?
That's the thing that is crazy about this. The terminology that Democrats come up with in order to describe women. You notice they don't do this for men.
Right.
This is always women that
and
get
they're
targeted.
Supposed to be the party for women.
Well, right. And they claim that it's, these conservative right-wingers that want this, world in which women only have one purpose, and that's to have babies. Look at how you describe them. Birthing persons, birthing pods, inseminated person.
Bonus holes.
Bonus holes. That was one of them, that women had bonus holes, suggesting that the right normal amount of holes is what a man has. So if you're a woman, well, you're not, you just have an extra one. It's a bonus. Oh, okay. Let's not be too demeaning. Some of you will appreciate this in the sense you will understand and recognize it. I don't know how it is with teenage boys or college-age boys any longer. But once upon a time, just, joking around, guys, they'll say things that are just to suggest that women are only good for one thing. And they would come up with all sorts, there would be jokes based around that. I can't give you examples because they are, very inappropriate. The terms that Democrats continue to come up with and sign into law that describe a woman are terms that you would have a bunch of drunk frat boys using in order to demean and insult other girls. You're nothing but a birthing person. That's all you're good for. You're an inseminated person. Like, what on earth? The 1,917-page bill was introduced Tuesday by Wisconsin Senate's Joint Committee on Finance and contained Evers' budget recommendation for the 25-27 fiscal period. Amendments to certain parts of the bill concern state laws on paternity disputes and artificial insemination. Recommended that the term mother be replaced with inseminated person or person inseminated, and replacing biological father with natural parent, husband with spouse, and male with person, among other changes. Why is it that the replacement terms for females are always so demeaning, whereas the guys, it's like, it's absurd, but it's just not so offensive. Instead of husband, you'll be spouse. Instead of male, you'll just be person. Oh, you're a woman, you're a birthing person or an inseminated person. Jiminy Christmas. What a battle they wage. You watch what has occurred in the last 4 or 5, going 5 weeks on the Trump administration, and just right out of the gate, meaningful changes, whether it is seeking out waste, it is correcting the sins of the past when it comes to incompetency and the allowance of incompetency in our military. You have the average numbers I saw in February of 2024. The number of border encounters was like up to 5,000 or like between 4,000 and 5,000. This past February, it was under 200. I mean, you talk about just a profound, meaningful difference. And what are Democrats fighting on? What is it that they're like, oh, yeah, well, Trump and the Republicans are doing that. Look at what we're doing over here. Oh, there's a whole number of different stories. You got, what was it? Let me get a traffic update. I'll share a couple other, including legislation in Colorado, Democrats, that calls for people who misgender trans people on their death certificate make that a jailable offense. It's all priorities. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Misgendering trans people on their death certificate could be a jailable offense under blue state bill, under the proposed law sponsored by Democrats, of course. Specifically, State Rep Karen McCormick and Kyle Brown and State Senator Mike Weissman. If a document memorializing the deceased gender's identity is presented, the individual completing the death certificate must record the descendant's base, or the decedent's, sex based on that identity. If this is thwarted in any way, the penalty is a Class 2 misdemeanor, which in Colorado is punishable by up to 120 days in jail and or a fine of $750. Priorities. On the flip side in Colorado, the Colorado General Assembly's House Judiciary Committee late Tuesday considered legislation, this is last week, to allow patients who underwent youth gender transition procedures, in other words, kids that were coaxed into getting sex change operations, if they were before age of 26, to sue their providers for damages up to the age of 38. Democrats blocked it. So you get some poor 11 or 12-year-old girl who is a victim of repeated sexual assault. And so because of that, she feels uncomfortable in her own body. She feels as if, and this is not uncommon amongst girls who get convinced they need sex change operations. They hate their sexual body organs because they feel as if that's what drew the assault upon them. Then they get told, because they don't feel comfortable in their own body, that it must be because you are actually a boy. And if you don't start getting the puberty blockers now, if you don't get a sex change operation, in all likelihood, you will kill yourself. And so they believe this stuff. They do it. And then they find out after they become an adult that this not only addressed the source of their real problem, but it just made it worse and did irreversible damage to them. And what the legislature, or at least the proposed legislation by Republicans in Colorado, saying if you were tricked into this as, some 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kid, and you realize at the age of, 26, 27, that you were misled, you were lied to, you can sue. Democrats block that. Nope. Screw them. It's true compassion. And then readers of the Sacramento Bee's coverage of a rally for legislation pitched as protecting girls, women, and parental rights at the California Statehood Friday would have no idea that someone shot at the house of the volleyball coach who helped inspire the bill and spoke at the rally, or even that San Jose State University fired her for exposing a male on the women's team. The Capital newspaper's omission of the shot fired through Melissa Bates Moose's window Monday while she was at home in a virtual meeting with an attorney, confirmed by local police Thursday, and her unwilling departure from SJSU appears par for the course in mainstream media coverage of the backlash to men competing as women in school sports. So in other words, what you have here is a person that is front and center as an actual woman, fighting to protect girls, and at some point somebody shoots at her house. Goes through the window. This is confirmed by law enforcement. It's not some sort of made-up situation. And the coverage of her and the coverage of this story, the media just amazingly omits the fact that she was the apparent target of a killing. Now, of course, we know if it were the other way around, and if this was some guy that pretended to be a girl fighting for the rights to use a shower with other girls, and there was a shot fired at that individual's house, that would be the lead story with the lead headline. Natalie Morin, a Canadian advisor. The reason I'm reading all of these to you this morning is to demonstrate the profound obsession that this extreme minority of elected officials and activists have that run completely counter to women's rights, to girls' rights, and to what the vast majority of Americans believe. And yet they continue as a political party, the Democrats, to run with this stuff. Nathaniel Morin, the Canadian advisor to the Federal Ministry of Women, this is a guy, because he identifies as a woman, in Canada, appointed as the Canadian advisor to the Federal Minister of Women, released a statement this week defending the advisor's participation in women's marathons and other running competitions as a transgender biological male. This is so most recently, Morris competed in the 5-kilometer or in a 5-kilometer run. This was February 4th of 2024. He came in first place with a time of 25:32, earning the title of fastest female across all age categories. The runner-up was a girl between the age of 10 and 12. So here's an adult male that knocked a girl that was 10, 11, or 12 years old out of the first place slot. I know there was an article from last week or the week prior in which MSNBC had 2 transgenders on to explain the devastating impact that Donald Trump's executive order was going to have regarding girl sports for girls and boy sports for boys, or boy sports for boys. And I've noticed this trend, perhaps you have as well, that the media continues to find the victims of this. And there's something very consistent about it that goes back to my earlier point, that this is not about trans, this is about girls. Every single time they have some athlete in particular that is transgender to talk about how devastating it will be if they are forced to compete in the category of their actual biological sex like the rest of us are, it's always a boy who pretends to be a girl. You have these left-wing networks that find boys and men to get up and lecture women about why it is that they need to keep their mouths shut and allow them to compete wherever they want. You know, once upon a time, there was this term used quite a bit by the left called mansplaining. And this was suggesting that if you were a man, and outside of any sort of anything political or just anything, and you tried to help somebody who happened to be a female by giving information or instruction on something, that was a bad thing because that suggested that as a man, you felt that you knew so much more than the woman that the poor little sweetheart needed your help. And it was called mansplaining in order to characterize it in a negative connotation. Yet here those same networks have boys who pretend that they're girls to come on television and tell girls why it is that they should be shamed for not allowing the boys to compete against them. Mansplaining. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Well, I'll have a look at the weather in the upcoming hour, and it is going to feel spring-like. We're talking about 60s virtually all week long. That's good. Get out in your garage, start cleaning it up, which, of course, depending on who you are, also requires to have a beer at arm's length. Bradford Light, Pineapple Life Coach at Area Macadoodles, some Area Macadoodles, price cutters as well. The Bradford Light for the hardworking men and women who appreciate a reliable, easy drinking experience, the two genders there. ABV of 3.8%, something perhaps a little more exotic. Pineapple Life Coach, infused with the exotic essence of ripe pineapples, a little bit more actually ABV, 4.0%, that's alcohol by volume. the delightful balance between tropical sweetness and drinkability for your weekend or week or whenever it is that you like to enjoy a brew from Kansas Territory Brewing Company, Bradford Light, Pineapple Coach, again at some area Macadoodles and Price Cutters. Darren Chappell will be joining us after 7:30 this morning, and also want to play a number of bits of audio, some within the Democrat world, one pollster in particular just saying that he's never seen anything like this, the Democrat Party falling off a cliff. And again, it's focusing on the things that are completely contrary to where it is that the American people are. So we've got all that coming up. You miss any of the show, of course, the podcast at ksgf.com, Spotify, iTunes as well. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041. I am Nick Reed. Welcome to the show. I love these headlines. As usual, Trump orders sparking fear and confusion. It's all so confusing. Probably is confusing to people who are used to the Washington way, where there's no accountability. You don't have to produce results. The worse you do, the more funding you get. And you can't ever lose your job no matter what you do. And then, I mean, you can really truly imagine that if that's the world you're accustomed to, and then one day somebody comes in and they demand, or they, they're going to work towards making those same institutions actually work efficiently, work properly. People are going to be held accountable. That would be very confusing. What are you talking about? What is this? I'm confused by all of this. Can there be a better illustration or argument for how bad things are? That the idea of having institutions run effectively, efficiently, that confuses the people in Washington, D.C.? I don't think that the media recognizes, I'm sure they don't, that they're making the point for Trump. They're making the point for Musk. They're making the point for the American people. And that is that they don't understand this. What do you mean efficiency? It's only, $30 billion. This is one of the new approaches that is taken by the media. In fact, I've got some great audio in which you've got Caroline Levitt, she's answering questions to the media. And then one reporter, I'm not sure what outlets he's with, but he uses three of the tactics in questions that the media is now using. One of them is, well, there's really no proof. What proof do you have that this is actually fraud? What proof do you have that all these things are actually going on? There's the tactic of downplaying it. Well, I mean, sure, you say $230 billion, but that's actually over 5 years. That's that's not over 1 year. Come on, let's be honest. So they have taken all of these positions in which they want the narrative to be one in which you believe that none of this is really that big of a deal. None of this, you're not getting screwed in any of this. And then they find individual people to make you feel as if a number of individual instances are a representation of what's going on all over the country. They'll begin questions, framing it as increasingly people from traditionally red states are saying that, they don't like the way things are going. What do you say about that? Every question that asks is from the perspective of keep doing what it is that we have been doing all this time that hasn't worked. All of the questions. And it's one of the reasons that the Democrat Party and the media continue to maintain their loss of credibility with the American people. Here's former Clinton pollster on with Laura Ingraham talking about the polls and where it is that the American people fall or I should say the Democrat Party falls in line with the priority of Americans.
Well, I've got some new polling coming out Monday that I've just looked at. And frankly, the Democratic Party is falling off a cliff. The ratings, which were in the high 40s, are going to be like 35%. And I think the basic question, who's doing better job as president, Biden or Trump? Trump is winning that with 57%. I think you're seeing a retrospective assessment of Biden and the direction the Democratic Party was going. It really a lot more negative than it was on Election Day. And they're looking at the contrast on immigration, on economic policy, on some of the social policies. And boy, they're reevaluating. In the Democratic Party, I have never seen anything like this. This is a record low for the Democratic Party in terms of favorability. It has fallen really, really way down. And I don't think there's any leadership right now that's going to be able to bring that back.
And that is true. Any leadership that isn't really, they have taken the helm as leader, because there is no leadership at the helm right now in the Democrat Party. But those that are most actively attempting in order to take the helm are extreme leftist. It is the losing direction. And that's what increasingly, and you notice that these are the Democrats that are the old blood, the Democrats who have been around during Democrat successes. I use the Clinton era as an example when the American people, after 2 years, the first 2 years of the Clinton administration, handed Republicans their first majority in Congress for decades. And the Democrat Party realized we have to change what we're doing. We have to moderate ourselves. We have to pull back from as far left as we were, not just in their rhetoric, but actually do it. This is where you had Clinton and the shutdown of the country, but eventually a number of concessions like welfare to work and a number of these other things that were seen as more meaningful conservative steps forward to getting people off of government, to reducing the size of government. We played audio last week, Clinton talking about getting rid of entire departments, the same thing that Trump is actually doing instead of just talking about. And that was because the leadership of the Democrat Party at the time recognized they had to get more, that they were out of whack with the Americans, so they had to get back in line with where Americans were. And that isn't happening with today's Democrat Party. Not those people that went through that era and understood what it took in order to get back into a position of power are the people like Mark Penn here talking about Democrats are just going off a cliff. And it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And there is nobody in a leadership position at this time that is going to correct things, at least that are, that's seen on the landscape. We've got weather in just a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 63. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 36. For your Tuesday, sunny skies with a high near 65. And looking ahead to Wednesday, we'll see a slight chance for rain in the afternoon, and then cloudy skies with a high near 60.
Streaming live, KSGF.com. Dan Bongino lands plum role in the Trump administration, Deputy Director of the FBI, of course, podcaster, increasingly popular talk radio host. Importantly, what really matters is his background in Secret Service and in law enforcement. This is one of the areas he's been so instrumental over the airwaves, particularly during the assassination attempts of Trump, is knowing for years and years and years the inner workings of law enforcement, the inner workings of the Secret Service, the inner workings of the FBI, and translating that in a way that helped people really understand what was going on. So he's going to be perfect for that example. However, be prepared, as we've already seen it this morning, this is going to be sort of like Hegseth. The media did not give, when they talked about Hegseth, they always led with Fox News guy. That was the totality, oftentimes, of the description of Hegseth, at least in headlines and in descriptions of him, even though his meaningful background in terms of the position for which he was tapped was one in the military. And Dan Bongino is someone whose background in law enforcement, when it comes to different divisions of law enforcement, that is what is instrumental in his appointment as the Deputy Director of the FBI. However, the media is going to lead with conservative radio talk show host. So their goal, as usual, is to sow distrust with the administration, to sow doubt within the administration, and make it appear as if Donald Trump is simply just getting a bunch of these right-wing talkers and, right-wing Fox News people and right-wing this that have no real meaningful background in this particular area, and it's going to be the same for Dan Bongino. The upside is Trump doesn't care. Trump has one goal in mind, and that is just to make things better. And he seems just absent, thankfully, of any concern about the media's disinformation campaigns and their attacks. And he's really in a sweet position because ultimately, really, he's not even worried about how some of this stuff polls, because I think that he believes tariffs is a good example of this, that come 2 years from now, 3 years from now, some of this stuff is going to take time, but it's going to start gelling. The economy really did not start booming until the beginning of Reagan's second term. He implemented in the first term a lot of those changes that he believed would lead to a booming economy, and they did, but it took a few years to do it. And Trump knows that this is the case as well, that in order to make real meaningful change, there are going to be some things that are implemented that you are not going to see the benefits of right away. This is a big machinery, and oftentimes what it takes to fix things in the long term, you don't start seeing the benefits until the long term. It's the same as, and I know many of you know this, your own financial well-being. If you spend year after year after year after year getting yourself into a hole, just because you change the way that you handle your personal finances does not mean that very next day everything is wonderful and you're financially stable. It takes a while to get out of it. It takes a while for you to pay things off one at a time and to change your spending habits to where you are financially secure. Just because you make the change doesn't mean that the results occur overnight. And Trump understands this clearly. Someone sent in a text message I want to read to you, and it brings up a very good point that I think that we all need to think about. This is a Pyramid Roofing Company talking text line. I think Musk is going too far. Why the national park employees? We need them for so many reasons. He seems like he has gone from finding fraud to making rash decisions that affect people's lives, even conservatives. He's making us conservatives look horrible. I am at a loss for words to have conversations with liberals regarding him. What do you think? Well, out of the gate, I would argue that the approach here is wrong. Instead of thinking by default, every single one of these jobs is needed, I believe it is incumbent upon the government, be it those departments themselves or the employees themselves, to explain why the job is needed. Why, instead of this, and this isn't a criticism other than just the way collectively we oftentimes approach things, we should not as taxpayers have to prove that those jobs aren't needed. The government should have to prove that they are needed. Now, when it comes to the parks themselves, I can't sit here and tell you that I know for a fact that every one of these jobs that is being eliminated is wasteful, because I don't. Do I suspect that they are? Do I believe that we will continue to have parks in this country 10 years from now in the same way that we do today if these cuts continue and hold in place? I do. I believe that. That doesn't mean I'm right, but this is what I believe. We have sort of this default position, and the media instills this in us, that every single one of these jobs is needed unless you can prove that it's not needed. And of course, there is always, well, what do we mean by needed? I mean, I'm sure that, let me give you an example. I lived in a community once that was not a very big community, but they had taxpayer-funded mass transportation. And it was the size of a community in which most communities that same size did not have they had a busing service. And there was this belief, because that is what they were accustomed to in this community, that it would be catastrophic if it went away. It was inconceivable that you could not have buses constantly running, even though half the time there was no one in them in this particular community. It became kind of a running joke. In fact, it got to the point where the city commissioned someone to put window tinting on the buses so that people could not see that they were empty. Despite people knowing this, it was just like, well, we have to have this because we always have. When in fact, people who had lived in other communities recognized that you don't have to have that. What happens to those people that's their only mode of transportation? Well, what happens to those people in communities in which there isn't mass transportation? It is found. People work their way around it. It doesn't mean that they're not impacted or affected by it, that maybe even some aspects of their lives are a little more inconvenient. So, it's the definition of what does need really mean. I'm sure every single job that exists, and this is a thing about government. See, they always find new things that they, quote, have to have more money in order to do. But do you really? Do we really need the number of people that we have today? This is why Elon Musk got tapped. Because when he bought Twitter, and I think this is what really impressed Trump as a business person, he went in and slapped like 70 to 80% of the people. And of course, all of those people and a lot of critics of Elon Musk all had a uniform message, and that is that platform will collapse on itself. Every one of those jobs is absolutely needed. It is absolutely instrumental in order for that platform to continue to function. Well, guess what? It's still functioning. Even with a name change, which oftentimes, Twitter just, a lot of people thought that was a crazy move, given that everyone knows what Twitter is. Why would you change the name of something that's like Coke all of a sudden deciding to change its name? Why would you do that? It's a household name. But even in doing that, Musk demonstrated that it's still running. It's just running, and because that's the way he's able to see things. And that is how he's looking at these government divisions. How many of these jobs are actually needed in order for these institutions to function? Now, to the point that these are people's lives, yeah, they are. And people's lives are going to be affected. That is absolutely true. But if we are going to make decisions about the size of government on whether or not the people who are going to lose their jobs, if their lives are going to be affected, then we're never going to cut government ever. We're never going to stop giving raises. We're never going to stop increasing the size of government because those people can use more help. You can always use more help. That is one of the tactics that the media is using to try and get people to take their eye off the ball. And the purpose of these jobs are not to create jobs for people. That's not what their purpose is. It is to allow government to function, ideally, in the very limited capacity that government is supposed to exist in the first place. And we're just so far off course from that. So, yes, people's lives are going to be affected. But as I mentioned this before, Margaret Thatcher said, though I don't remember the exact quote, whenever we're fixing things, we're in a financial hole fixing things, it is going to hurt, but don't blame the fixer. It hurts because of years and years and years of mismanagement. This doesn't mean that Musk isn't going to make mistakes. It doesn't mean that there won't be something. And this is, again, this is the difference between the government perspective and people who have run businesses. You recognize that you are going to make some changes that you're going to have to reevaluate. That's how businesses work. There seems to be this joy oftentimes found if, you get some change that's made over here and, well, look, they had to undo that. That proves their failures. No, it proves that they adjust when necessary. It proves that they understand that whenever you make some decision, you make some move, and then you look at it a week later or 4 weeks later and you're like, you know what? Actually, now we see there was value in that. Let's go back to it. That shouldn't be seen as a failure. That should be seen as a successful approach. Now, in terms of how do you talk to liberals about this, you can't, because they are one-dimensional. Everything is through the lens of Donald Trump is bad and evil, so it is irrelevant to them, the nuance and the details and the realities of what all of this really looks like. But I'm glad that person texted in that question, because that is a valuable question that we do really need to understand and not get lulled into thinking nothing should change simply because, Elon Musk hasn't proven that the job is needed and because people's lives are going to be impacted by it. Darren Chappell joining us in moments. I'm Nick Reed. All right, we're going to chat with Darren Chappell coming up here in just a couple of moments. Pyramid Roofing Company talk at text line 447 KSGF. Friday, Heroes Breakfast, veterans at Scramblers. We're going to have free breakfast for you. Delta Roofing Air Services, heating, cooling, plumbing, electrical, and Warriors Journey, all making that possible. So we'd love for you to join us as the doors open at 6. And then at 10 a.m. Friday, KSGF.com. Local for Less Ozarks for $15, $30 gift certificate for 5 guys.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Cullerton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 63. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 36. For your Tuesday, sunny with a high near 65. And looking ahead to Wednesday, we'll see a slight chance for rain in the afternoon and then cloudy skies with a high near 60.
Darren Chappell joins us this morning. It is good to see you. Got to see you Friday, in fact.
Yeah,
and over there at Scramblers, and then we had a conversation off air about you coming in to give further detail on an issue that a lot of people are taught. Anytime you're talking about, regulations and chemicals and all that stuff, it is very understandable how easy it is for people to not actually necessarily know what is going on. And that's why I wanted to have you here to talk particularly about the background of this. And this legislation deals with something, what's it called? Is it in the Roundup or something?
Glyphosate.
Yeah. You'd think I would know that by now because there's commercials that run all the time for it on here.
Yeah.
And I've been asked about that, and I was like, honestly, I hear them, but I don't even know what they're saying.
Yeah.
And I said also, I don't know that they move the needle. So this person was concerned that they were, misleading people. But again, I haven't really sat and listened to them enough to know one way or another. Not anything I can do about it anyway. But so tell what is this about? What are you hearing? What is it people are getting wrong about this?
Well, I don't, I hesitate to say that anybody's getting anything wrong. It's a very emotionally charged issue. And I let me be the first one to admit I don't do emotions well. I had my emotions surgically removed years ago, and I just don't, that's not my thing. But I'm not suggesting that others who are wound up about this from an emotional perspective are wrong. It's not that they're wrong. But I think there's another side to the story that needs to at least be understood. So glyphosate is listed by the IARC,
which is,
I think it's the International Agency for Research on Cancer.
So this is not a government agency?
It is not a government
Got
agency.
It. Okay. Or not a U.S. government agency.
It's not a government agency of any sort.
Got it.
And it is listed by the IARC as being a potential carcinogen. Now, this agency has a list comprised of all different kinds of things, and they're broken down into 3 categories. Category 1 are things that are proven to cause cancer in human beings. Category 2 may cause cancer, but there's not enough evidence to say one way or the other.
Got it.
And then Category 3 is proven not to be. So the IARC has listed glyphosate as a Category 2.
Got it. As maybe not.
Maybe not, but there's not enough evidence. And it's not for lack of research. They just can't prove it. Now, the EPA, which I'm no big fan of, they've said in the past, hey, we don't see a connection between cancer in humans and glyphosate. Assuming it's used correctly. Right? I mean, if you gargle this stuff 3 times a week, you're probably going to have a problem. Yeah. But it's not just the EPA. It's the United Kingdom. It's France. Even Germany, which has banned the use of glyphosate, did not find any human connection. Germany's worried about its effects on amphibians. And I guess Germans really like their frogs. I don't know what to tell you. So they banned it over there. But that's the only country in the world that's banned this stuff. And it's not because they found a connection to human cancers. Now, I understand that people will say, well, surely it causes cancer. I hear all the ads. Well, who's running those ads? Well, it's the trial attorneys looking to get you signed up for a potential benefit because there have been settlements that have been made. I believe it was $11 billion that Monsanto paid for this to make it go away, so that they can continue. Now, I'm no big fan of Monsanto either. I don't like the fact that we're engineering our foodstuffs to the point that what happens if something pops up and it wipes them all out. Now we don't have anything that can grow. because they've genetically modified it to be essentially clones of one another. And I certainly don't like the fact that you've got Monsanto seed over on this farm, and then the wind blows and the pollen goes to another farm, and then they want to sue the second farmer because he's growing a hybridized crop. Well, that's not his fault, right? So there are things about Monsanto I'm not a fan of at all. So the question became, who do you want to support? Well, you have to go back and look and see. Okay, so Monsanto is owned by Bayer, which is a German company. The only country in the world that bans this stuff is Germany, and this is a German company. They're not real upset about it, or else they wouldn't let them make it at all. You have to look at the question of, if there are cancer cases that are caused by this stuff, the first line where you're going to see that is in the manufacturing process. If it's really that bad, surely the people who are actually making it, bottling it, distributing it, surely they're the ones that we're going to see it in first. You know, at the turn of the last century, phosphorus matches caused what they call phossy jaw. And it was real common among women because they had smaller fingers. They're in their packing matches, and the phosphorus was causing the bone of their jaw to degenerate. And so that's where you saw it first. Okay. You also have to look on the other side. Who is the IARC? Well, they're a subsidiary of the WHO, the World Health Organization, which is also a subsidiary of the United Nations. Well, I don't like either one of these guys.
Yeah.
But I guess I missed the memo where it's conservative to support the United Nations. I didn't remember that being on the list. And then you have to ask yourself, well, what else is on their list of potential carcinogens at the same level as glyphosate?
Right. Maybe not cancer.
I'm trying to compare
Level 2.
apples to apples here. And it includes things like red meat, aloe vera, hot beverages, deep fried vegetables, deep fried fish, right? Being a barber or a hairdresser is on the list at the same level. And it is an attempt, I believe, by the United Nations to once again interfere in the American culture and economy, specifically the agricultural aspect of who and what we are. And we feed the world because of what our agricultural economy is able to accomplish here in the United States. And I was talking to somebody, and he said, well, we used to feed the world before this too. And I said, well, not really. Do you remember the Ethiopian crisis? You know, you got hundreds of thousands of people
Sally
dying.
Struthers.
Right. Yeah. When's the last time you saw one of those ads? When's the last time we had one of those deals? We don't have those now because we're feeding the world. Now you can argue, should we be? Is it worth? You know, all that. I'm not even talking about that. But the idea that agriculture is being put upon by the United Nations in an attempt to try to knock the United States down a notch or two, that shouldn't shock anybody.
We're talking about Darren Chappell. I want to take a break and then talk about what this legislation that Jeff City, how it addresses this, and then where it is that the different interpretations of that particular legislation. I think most diplomatic way to put it. With Darren Chappell coming up here, Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Darren Chappell with us. There is, well, you, I guess, explained this legislation that is related to the subject matter in which we speak.
You don't want to have to say glyphosate.
Glyphosate.
Okay.
Well, is it specifically about glyphosate, or is it about a specific product that has glyphosate in it?
No.
Okay.
I guess that didn't really answer your question because you asked an either or, and I just said no.
Well, I thought maybe it was
yeah.
no to both of those.
Yeah. So glyphosate is listed as a pesticide by the FDA and the EPA, and it's actually an herbicide. The only reason it's a pesticide is if you think crabgrass is a pest, I guess.
Okay.
But nevertheless, that's what it is. The bill deals specifically with this product that we most commonly deal with Roundup,
Okay.
which has glyphosate in it.
Got it.
And so anyway,
And just if people didn't hear the previous segment, the whatever organization, part of the UN, there's a 1, 2, 3 level. 1, it's shown to cause cancer. 2, it maybe does, maybe doesn't. We don't know. 3, it does not cause cancer. This is listed as a 2, which you noted they also list red meat and being a barber in that same category.
Yeah, aloe vera.
Yeah, aloe vera, yeah.
So if you're using aloe vera on your hands and stuff, I would argue
it's in the same category.
It's in exactly the same category. So hot beverages too. Hot coffee. Are you kidding me? I'm liable to just fall over at any moment. So at any rate, this bill, what it does is it says, look, the EPA already has warning labels on this product and many others. And this bill says that in the state of Missouri, that labeling is sufficient to warn people. We didn't tell them what the label had to read or what it couldn't read. It just simply says that labeling is sufficient to warn people. Now, it therefore eliminates the ability to sue because you were not warned. You can still sue because of the product harms you in some way that, it violates the manufactured purpose of the thing. You can still do that. Look at cigarettes. We've had warning labels on there for 60 years. You can still sue the tobacco companies, and in fact the states did. So when I hear people talking about blanket immunity, that's not accurate. There is immunity on failure to warn, but as you said, the ads are running nonstop. Who has not heard about this? And if you don't like the EPA's warning label, petition the EPA. You got RFK Jr. in there now, and I'm sure he may change the label of the EPA standard, and that's fine. I'm not against that.
Right.
But as I told you off air, you could prove 100% that this will cause cancer, and if you use this product, you're going to die in the next 25 years. A lot of farmers use it anyway. Yeah. It is possibly the most successful product that has ever been produced in agriculture, certainly in the last century. And it was created in 1970. It's been used for 50 years, and it works. It was great though on the floor because we were just before we were debating a bill on St. Louis Police Department, and oh man, here they come, the St. Louis people, and they specifically said, so many of you are rural Missourians, and the rural state reps shouldn't have anything to say about how we run St. Louis. So when we switched to this bill, I reminded them of their hypocrisy that, you don't tell us how to kill weeds. The idea that we're just going to take away something that farmers have relied upon for 50 years because one organization says it might cause cancer, but to my knowledge, to this very day, there is not a single study that says that it actually does.
So then, talking with Darren Chappell, I got the impression, based off of conversations that we've had, that there are some people who have been critical of where you are in this legislation, claiming that your position is not conservative. Why is, as you understand it, that their perspective, and then the legislation itself, which I know you've pretty much explained, but a summation of why it is where you are and why you feel that isn't inconsistent with being conservative?
Well, again, I've never seen where conservatism in America requires us to support the efforts of the United Nations to cripple the United States economy. So I don't understand that, just from a rational perspective.
Well, so do you not agree with it, but understand why some people in their minds, because that's what I'm trying to
100%.
So what is their argument?
So again, I started off this interview by saying this is a very emotional issue.
Right, yeah.
I don't know how many people have actually done the research that I have as to the background.
Well, most people probably would not.
Who's actually doing this,
Yeah.
right? And I think if you, in fact, I was talking to a representative, and I didn't say anything about this bill, but I just talked about another bill, and I said, you know, the United Nations and WHO's behind this, and this particular representative said, well, I'm voting no on anything those guys are involved in, and then turned right around and opposed this deal because doesn't know the connections. Okay, so why would anybody know if this isn't their job? It's my job. Yeah. I have to look it up. So there's that. There's also the reality that in our society today, right now, the definition of conservative for most people is, do you agree with me or not?
Well, sure. With self-identified conservatives.
Yeah. And of course that's perfectly legitimate as long as you are the standard of right and wrong. And you know, I just
so why are they then opposed to it or supportive of it?
Yeah, no, opposed to the bill.
Because what does the bill do? I guess it should.
The bill again just simply says the labeling that the EPA provides. That's enough, and therefore
you've been warned.
You're not allowed to sue for failure to warn.
Got it.
That's all the bill does.
Got it.
Doesn't make anybody use it. Nothing.
Got it. So then I guess I'm still trying to figure out somebody who sees themselves as conservative. Why are they opposed to that?
I think for most people, it's because someone they respect told them to.
Okay.
They saw it on Facebook.
So,
some blog said this is terrible, and you have to understand that there are people who are trying to utilize things like this to drive wedges between people on our side of the aisle for their own personal political gain. And where I draw the line, if you disagree, you think everything I just said is wrong and stupid and I'm a dupe, okay. Where I draw the line is what I saw this past weekend. Here are all the people that voted yes on this, and the only explanation is they've been paid off by Monsanto. Well, guys, if that's the case, my check is lost in the mail because I ain't seen it yet.
Well, are the people who vote against it, why are they saying they voted against it?
Well, because they don't want to give some corporation the ability to have immunity over the American people.
Got it.
And I get it. I totally get it. Like I said, it's a horrible choice between the United Nations and trial lawyers and Monsanto and this massive corporation. It's not a good choice. But the idea that reasonable people can look at the same thing and come up with different conclusions and still be reasonable, that seems to be lost in today's political climate.
I saw it was a meme, and it looked like one of the old children's books from my era, the golden. So I forgot what the titles were.
Little golden books.
Yeah, little golden books.
That was before your era, too, by the way.
Oh, I think we had some, probably from garage sales, and it was sort of colorful, and it was Hitler on a wagon or something, and it was something like learning it. Teaching kids about politics. Everyone who disagrees with me is Hitler.
Yeah.
That's what it really has boiled down to.
It is now. What cracks me up is the same tactics that the left use against President Trump. Some of these folks are using against Republicans here in the state of Missouri. Let's have the debate. Let's have the argument.
Right.
And if I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to admit it. But let me tell you something, Scooter. If you want to say that I'm bought off, that I'm on the take, and that I'm not voting conscience, not voting rationality because I'm getting more money than what the state allows for me to, now you better have your ducks in a row because I've got mine. I can promise you that.
Darren Chappell, is always a pleasure. I appreciate you coming in on this specifically. And
it's my privilege.
Getting looped in on it.
Reasonable minds can disagree.
Agreed.
It's okay. But, President Reagan talked about how somebody that disagrees with you, even 20% of the time, that's not an enemy. That's somebody you need to talk to, and let's try to meet in the middle.
The founders disagreed on quite a few
Oh,
things.
hated each other in some cases. I mean, Jefferson called Adams a hermaphrodite in public just for political gain.
Right.
And, there was no evidence that he actually was one. But Jefferson, So, I mean, I don't have thin skin.
Right.
Come at me. Let's talk.
Just do it legit.
But crying out loud.
Darren Chappell, thank you, sir.
My privilege.
Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. For those of you requesting to have the conversation with Darren Chappell on, we will get that up on the podcast, Spotify, iTunes as well. Just give us a few moments on that. Another hour straight ahead, streaming live, KSGF.com, YouTube as well. News coming up in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com. All of your home loan needs, refinancing, original home loan, first time, 10th time, 100th time, reverse mortgaging. That is something that is available to you, the information. We had a great conversation with Anthony Carricker just about, on Friday. This was the changing landscape and how it is that a lot of people believe the real savings if you're looking to buy a home. And they want, $280,000, and you're like, well, okay, we'll give you $270,000. That, the $10,000 savings you get there spread over your 15, 20, 30 years, compared to instead getting them to cover that much in closing cost or to buy points so your interest rate goes, whatever it is, that the default go-to of trying to get a better deal as a buyer, of simply getting a lower price on the home, is really the least effective way to get that pricing down in any meaningful way. And most people don't realize that. He said it's amazing to see how many buyers don't realize that. Now, he did mention Emily Johnson is one that is really good about making sure that she takes care of her buyers in that particular capacity, but odds are that's not something that you are benefiting from if you're using your standard run-of-the-mill realtor. The Carrickers and their team can give you all the information on that, what that looks like when the time comes. But, that is one of the reasons I have touted them for years. It's not just the job that they do once you decide you need a home loan. It's how well-versed they are in everything that's going on in the industry and the advice that they are willing to just offer you up even before you decide that you need that refinancing or home loan. And it's all at iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. We watch in amazement these Democrats that still don't get it. And it's great for Trump, and frankly, it's great for the country, because they continue to fight. It's like the more the American people are against them, the harder they fight. The two biggest battles that they fight tooth and nail over right now, forcing girls to compete against boys and take showers with them. Even a majority of Democrats are against that. And the cutting of wasteful spending and the nefarious nature in which these dollars are spent, yet nobody somehow is responsible. This system that they have set up in which all of this money spent, yet nobody knows who's spending it. Nobody knows who is responsible. When you hear about $50 million or $100 million going towards Mozambique for transgender comic books or whatever it is, nobody knows who is responsible for that. Think about that. We don't know that. We don't know who said yes and greenlit that. I can all but guarantee you it wasn't an elected official, which of course also means that we have no representation when it comes to these vast amounts of dollars of ours that are spent. No representation. There is no one that we can hold accountable for this. And most people recognize that they don't care for that. This is another area that the Democrats are fighting. The only thing that is more profoundly amazing than watching these Democrats that don't get it are the Republicans that don't. While CPAC was having their event with Trump and Milei of Argentina and Elon Musk and other conservative, CPAC being the conservative PAC, there was another event going on, and they're never Trump Republicans. It's a principles matter or some crap like that. Their only principle being that they hate Donald Trump. That's what the entire event was, just talking about how awful Donald Trump is. Anytime your overriding principle is the hatred of someone else, you're going to find that you're probably not going to win. While hate does motivate a certain segment of the population, it's largely hope and inspiration that rallies most people, because most people want things to be better. They get excited about things being better, and it's one of the reasons that Trump is experiencing the level of support that he is versus these Republicans that hold these events and sit around and trash on Trump. And it's like, what do you people not get? I want to play news and then share with you some of these people and just you look at what is being done, and if you really are principled as a, quote, conservative, instead of trashing on Trump, tell us why it is that those things are in violation of conservative principles. Harkening back to the conversation we had earlier with Darren Chappell, it's fine to disagree. We should be able to. That's how you get better. It's how you better yourself. It's like sparring. When you disagree with someone, to talk it out, to talk about it, to talk about the issue itself. Increasingly what we see from, of course, Democrats, but these anti-Trump Republicans, it's just about Trump. They don't talk about the issue itself. They don't articulate why, Trump's approach of a secure border is out of line with what they claim is the Republican Party's stance on border security. They don't articulate why it is that Trump's push to eliminate taxes on tips is something that is, in their assessment, a violation of Republican principles. They just talk about Trump is horrible, Trump is awful, how do we get past Trump? Weather in a moment, great weather. Right now, latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 63. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 36. For your Tuesday, sunny with a high near 65. And looking ahead to Wednesday, we'll see a slight chance for rain in the afternoon and then cloudy skies with a high near 60.
All right. So there was an anti-Trump event by Republicans, and you think that it is a marvel to watch Democrats that just don't seem to understand where it is the American people are coming from. But for these Republicans that are still in this Trump is horrible, Trump is awful, it's like, what world are you living in? I mean, at least Democrats can look at their, if you look at the bulk of the American people, and you are going to say, all right, which ones, when Democrats as a party, they've existed through a lot, they've survived a lot, and, you know, there's a bit of a swing. Who do you support? Now, they're doing, right now, they're in the worst place that they've been in a very, 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 very long time in terms of public support and what it is that they stand for. But if you're a Republican and you're anti-Trump, what audience are you targeting? I mean, that's got to be the smallest target that is available. So this event took place over the week. One of the people, Chris Christie, was there because he's so relevant within the Republican Party. And just, I'm going to read to you from some of this article to give you an idea of who some of these people are. Talk of waiting things out was constantly in tension with what many saw as an urgent movement in history that demanded action. Tom Nichols, a retired academic who now writes for The Atlantic, said this is the collapse of an American ideal, American ideology, the American view of the world. To his right on the stage, again, these are so-called conservatives. To his right on stage, one of the most recognized democracy advocates, chess grandmaster and Russian dissident Garry Kasparov, offered a political correction. Quote, "We are not watching the collapse of the American ideal. We are watching the betrayal of the American ideal. We are living in the middle of a coup." As the day's session neared its end, Sarah Longwell, a political strategist and publisher of The Bulwark, deadpanned, quote, "This has been a long day and is terrifying," before calling President Trump a fabulist, a liar, and a bad person. No one really objected to the verdict, but it was not apparent what to do with it. Before the summit closed out on Sunday, organizers announced they had received a credible bomb threat from someone claiming to be Enrique Tarrio, the former leader of the Proud Boys, forcing a temporary evacuation. Tarrio reportedly denied any involvement. Yeah, most people don't say who they are when they call in a bomb threat. While adopting a resigned, waited-out slouch, a running thread at the summit came down to a simple but actionable question. At what point has the United States entered into a constitutional crisis? Trump has been musing that he was not subject to court rulings, might serve a third term, and could start annexing the Panama Canal, Canada, and Greenland. Gonzalez, who served as President George W. Bush's top lawyer and ran his Justice Department, but endorsed Kamala Harris. Again, these are all people that are supposedly the real conservatives in the Republican Party. He said he's waiting to see if Trump ignores an inevitable setback from the courts. Quote, "Until that happens, we don't have a constitutional crisis," Gonzalez added. Hutchinson, former U.S. attorney, said we're not there yet, and Chris Christie, another former U.S. attorney, said he too is concerned about the looming crisis, but warned that the language is being too casually bandied about. Now, Bill Kristol was there as well. The resistance will rise, he says, but will it rise quickly enough? In the crowd, there was visible shaking of heads. This is labeled, they label themselves as principled people. But what is their principle? What are these principles of which they speak? Is it simply Donald Trump is a bad person? In that entire article, quoting all of these self-identified conservative Republicans, there was no mention of any of the actual issues. Is what makes one a conservative simply their personality, or is it where they stand on issues? These individuals, what they did not do was explain, break down each and every one of Trump's individual actions, actual actions, and explain how those are not conservative and Republican principles. Tax cuts, for example. His first term, very successful when it came to tax cuts. Is pushing tax cuts once again, including, of course, we know specifically talking about eliminating taxes for people in the service industry, waiters, waitresses, servers. Why is it that these so-called real conservative Republicans don't explain how that is a violation of conservative principles? Securing the border. Why do they not tackle that? Why is it that they are not explaining at this anti-Trump, pro-conservative summit why it is that when it comes to the issue of securing the border, actually doing so in a meaningful way? And I'm talking about results. February numbers of encounters, it was one section of the border in particular, last year in February was over 4,000. This year, under 200. Why is the so-called conservative Republican event not explaining why that is in violation of conservative Republican values? Getting NATO to once again agree to increasing their financial commitment to the organization. Where is the explanation how that is out of line with conservative principles? When it comes to girls being protected in sports, recognizing that there are two genders, that whole science thing. Why was there no talk about how Trump's position on these things is out of line with the conservative principles that they claim they are the great champions of? This is one of the great kickers about these never-Trumpers who claim that they are the, quote, real Republicans, that they are the real conservatives, and that is that Trump is actually doing what it is that conservatives, the real ones, claim that they support. Not even mentioning Doge. How many times have you, if you are somebody that has followed or perhaps even attended events, as somebody involved in Republican politics, hear about smaller government, smaller government, smaller government? Here Trump's actually doing it. Yet the real conservatives tell us how horrible that is, how awful that is, how disruptive that is. Oh, really? So now smaller government, lower taxes, we're told, is out of step with the real conservative Republicans? These, as absurdly out of touch as the people who right now are the loudest voices in the Democrat Party are, the never Trump Republicans, the Chris Christies, the Bill Kristols, the Christine Todd Whitmans. You could go down the list of these individuals. So many from past administrations. I'm telling you, they are the hold my beer crowd. You want to see out of touch? We'll show you. But aside from being so clearly out of touch, I just think it's very telling that the people who label themselves as principled, when taking on Trump, they aren't talking about what he's actually doing and how that's out of step with the Republican conservative principles. Have that discussion. Unless, of course, you think you can't. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. All right, we got weather coming up here in just a moment. Also want to play some Trump audio at CPAC, and then Marco Rubio sat down with Catherine Herridge, who is one of the few, well, I don't even know if she's mainstream anymore. She got booted from CBS, probably because she's actually a legitimate, straight-up investigative journalist. And Marco Rubio relaying a story that demonstrates the frustration that the Trump administration is having with Zelensky. But I did want to mention Kamala Harris receiving the NAACP award, which many people are calling a participation trophy, which is perfect, right?
Accurate.
This is the, what is this? The Image Award? What? She social media. Yeah, she received the Chairman's Award at the 56th NAACP Image Award. You want to talk about an organization that completely delegitimizes the significance of an award if this isn't it? Can you think of, honestly, you take the politics out of it, anyone that is a bigger failure in the grouping of those that would qualify for an NAACP award? This is a woman that Democrats were openly encouraging Biden to drop off the ticket prior to his election being overthrown by the Democrat Party. This is a woman whose image, this is an Image Award, a Chairman's Award for the Image Awards, that is known as the word salad lady. I mean, these are the things that the average person thinks of when they think of Kamala Harris. You're telling me that there is no, in this entire country, this is the sad thing about it, there is no person of color that is more deserving, that is more accomplished than Kamala Harris? One of the concerns a lot of Americans had, in whatever limited capacity they cared about what the rest of the world thought, is that they would believe Kamala Harris was a representation of the best we had as a woman in this country, because this Democrats continue to pick and highlight these women that are consistently insistent on demonstrating that they're idiots. And for all of the talk and focus and the importance of, first woman president like that, are you serious? The NAACP 56 Image Awards, a Chairman's Award. It sounds like the top award. I mean, this is from the chairman himself or herself. That Kamala, of all of the people of color in this entire country, all of the accomplishments, Kamala Harris is the one that you feel is the best to deserve this award? What an insult to black people in the country of the United States of America. How pathetic. If ever there was any question about this award or these awards and whether they act, because we hear it all the time, well, when it comes to identifying people of color that are successful, it's not about their color. It's just about their real meaningful contributions, and they happen to be a person of color. Oh, that's how we're going to describe Kamala Harris? Her real, true, meaningful contributions to our society? What was that? Allowing Trump to win every swing state? Last week, there was a Democrat supporter, longtime Democrat activist, that identified that when you broke it down, there were only two categories in which Democrats overperformed in the presidential election: university elites and the uber wealthy. Those are the only two breakdown categories in which Democrats did better than they usually do. Every other category went to Donald Trump, including people of color and women. And Kamala Harris was the opponent and she had networks like CBS cutting and pasting her interviews in order to try and help her win the presidency. With all of the help, all of the billionaire donors, all of the editing of interviews to do everything they could in order to get her to win, and she still managed to lose to Trump in a way that many consider to be unimaginable. Yet she is the one that they feel is best deserving of that award. Can you imagine if you actually had one of those awards in your mantle and you look at it and go, well, this isn't worth anything now. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 104.1, your first alert forecast from Cullerton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 63. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 36. For your Tuesday, sunny with a high near 65. And looking ahead to Wednesday, we'll see a slight chance for rain in the afternoon and then cloudy skies with a high near 60.
Joy Reid's out at MSNBC, which is not the best news for Trump because it's good news for Democrats, despite what they want to believe. The more they get away from focusing on lunatics like Joy Reid, it's actually the better it is for the Democrat Party. The Joy Reids, the Ocasio-Cortezes, the Al Sharptons, all of these hysterical left-wing lunatics are beneficial to Trump and to the Republican Party because they increasingly identify the Democrat Party as filled with a bunch of loons. I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but speaking of, when I watched last, I think Sunday or Monday night, we have our YouTube TV to record SNL. We don't generally watch it, but I don't even know why we said it though. Probably to catch somebody in particular that was hosting one night, but the 50th anniversary, so we started to watch it. And, of course, they had a couple of different jokes about Kanye West, of course, because he's anti-Semitic, but digs at him throughout the show. I think 2. They actually gave a speaking part, though, to Al Sharpton in a skit, which had to do with people in the crowd. The crowd was the elite. the richest amongst the rich, Hollywood celebrities. So with the exception of, I think I saw Rob Schneider up there maybe, that these are all left-wing Democrats. It is the true reflection of the Democrat Party. And Al Sharpton's up there. I'm like, it's not a defense of Kanye West, but it's just, they don't care about anti-Semitism. The only reason that Kanye West has ever gotten any flack for being anti-Semitic is because he came out at one point and said favorable things about Donald Trump. Al, you want to look at who has actually done more damage to the Jewish community? Kanye West or Al Sharpton? Kanye West can't even hold a candle. Al Sharpton led riots in which Jewish people were murdered in New York City. He led riots specifically against Jewish people, calling them all sorts of anti-Semitic names. And SNL gives him a role in a skit in which he actually gets a couple of lines. See, he's okay. Louis Farrakhan is okay. You can be anti-Semitic. All of the college campus protesters are okay. They have no problem with anti-Semitism. You just have to be on their side. Marco Rubio had a sit down with Catherine Herridge, and he relayed what I think is a pretty interesting story about part of the problem and frustration that the Trump administration is having with Zelensky. Of course, Trump, and I think this is working in his favor, making the comments about Zelensky being a dictator because he canceled elections. And the media and Democrats pushing back on this. And this allows for people to talk, well, why would Trump say this? Well, oh, you mean Zelensky canceled elections because he declared martial law? And people are, because of those comments, the media is drawing attention to Zelensky. And so some people are learning things they did not know. And one of those new bit of knowledge that was revealed was by Secretary of State Marco Rubio in this conversation with Catherine Herridge.
Is a dictator without elections. What are you thinking?
I think President Trump is very upset at President Zelensky, and in some cases, and rightfully so. Look, number one, Joe Biden had frustrations with Zelensky. People shouldn't forget it. There are newspaper articles out there about how he cursed at him in a phone call because Zelensky, instead of saying thank you for all your help, is immediately out there messaging what we're not doing or what he's not getting. I think the second thing is, frankly, I was personally very upset because we had a conversation with President Zelensky, the vice president and I, three of us. And we discussed this issue about the mineral rights. And we explained to them, look, we want to be in a joint venture with you, not because we're trying to steal from your country, but because we think that's actually a security guarantee. If we're your partner in an important economic endeavor, we get to get paid back some of the money the taxpayers have given, close to $200 billion. And it also, now we have a vested interest in the security of Ukraine. And he said, sure, we want to do this deal. It makes all the sense in the world. The only thing is I need to run it through my legislative process. They have to approve it. I read 2 days later that Zelensky's out there saying, I rejected the deal. I told him, no way, that we're not doing that. Well, that's not what happened in that meeting. So you start to get upset by somebody. We're trying to help these guys. One of the points the president made in his messaging is not that we don't care about Ukraine, but Ukraine is on another continent. You know, it doesn't directly impact the daily lives of Americans. We care about it because it has implications for our allies and ultimately for the world. There should be some level of gratitude here about this. And when you don't see it and you see him out there accusing the president of living in a world of disinformation, that's very counterproductive. And I don't need to explain to you or anybody else, President Trump's not the kind of person that's going to sit there and take that. He's very transparent. He's going to tell you exactly how he feels. And he sent a message that he's not going to get gamed here. He's willing to work on peace because he cares about Ukraine. And he hopes Zelensky will be a partner in that, and not someone who's out there putting this sort of counter messaging to try to, hustle us in that regard. That's not going to be productive here.
Now, subsequent to this interview, J.D. Vance would say, yeah, that's what happened, because J.D. Vance was part of that conversation as well. Not that Rubio needed anybody to back him up on that. He has the credibility. But, this is, as being described, it was a great answer. Great answer. And it was enlightening. It should be understood when Marco Rubio talks about how, Trump isn't going to take that. He's not going to take, it's not going to work well to go out there and on one hand say this to the United States. Oh, yeah, I'm on board. That sounds good. But then go out and try to make yourself sound like some sort of tough guy that rejected it. The reason that this is, as Marco Rubio noted, something that Trump is not going to work well with Trump is not because Trump, as the media would love to portray him, oh, well, he's just thin-skinned. It's because Trump is wanting to get this thing done. And in order to get things done, you can imagine if you're trying to work out something between two opposing parties, and one of them, you get with, you think you made forward progress, and then they go out there and they're mouthing, in a manner that demonstrates that, okay, we just got set back. I guess that deal isn't on the table. It takes up time. So is that deal off the table? Why is he saying this? It sets things back. And Trump has one goal. That's it. One goal. And that is to get this thing stopped. That's it. And anything that is disruptive to that is going to be of great annoyance. Think of it this way. Maybe if you're as a kid, you're fighting with your brother or sister, and it was, your brother that was in the wrong. He started it. And you've just been bickering, you've been fighting, and mom or dad or both of them, they're just fed up with it, and they just tell you to stop it. And then you're like, I don't care. I don't care. Quit it. It ends now. It stops now. And then you keep trying to explain because it was your brother's fault. He's the one who started it. You were totally wrong. But your parents are the point. I don't care because their number one goal is just make it stop. I don't care whose fault it is. I don't care. Go to your rooms. Don't come out until you start getting along. You've been through that. Maybe you've not only received that treatment as a child, but you shoved it back out to your own kids. That's where Trump is with this thing. Now, he may opine, he may be asked, he may, talk about, well, this guy's this and that guy's that, but the whole point is, in doing that, is to get this thing moving along. It feels like Zelensky needs a little bit of a shove, that Zelensky is feeling a little too comfortable in calling the shots, then he's going to call him out in a way that, whether it's successful or not is only seen in hindsight, but that he believes is going to move this along. But ultimately, the only goal he has is just to stop it, and everybody goes to their room until you're ready to come out and start getting along. And that's why what Marco Rubio relayed here as a story is, number one, Zelensky isn't this, the pure as the driven snow guy. Just because Putin's a bad guy doesn't mean by default everything Zelensky does and says is golden. But the great frustration in moving forward with this stuff, and it's not to say that there aren't going to be disagreements, there aren't going to be sticking points, but Rubio's point here is it was blatant dishonesty. So we don't know where we stand with this stuff because Zelensky is behind closed doors saying one thing, and then the next day he's out there saying something completely opposite. That is a setback. And Trump is going to respond appropriately. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Zelensky making headlines over the weekend, saying, if peace for Ukraine, if you really need me to resign, I'm ready, he said in response to a question at a press conference about whether he was ready to quit in exchange for peace. There was one catch. He said that I can exchange it for NATO. So this actually, marketing-wise, isn't the worst idea, though it's not going to gain him much ground in terms of the ultimate ending here. But he knows that immediate NATO membership is off the table, that is not really in the cards. And so this allows him to push back against the accusations of dictatorship behavior because he declared martial law, thereby canceling elections, by saying, hey, I'll walk away right now as long as this happens. When you know that that's not going to happen, then it makes it a little easier to do that, but it's pretty smart on his part to do that. Meanwhile, Trump is set to meet with world leaders in D.C. during this week as the Ukraine-Russian peace talks continue. This will be the fifth week back in Oval Office. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz said on Fox News' America Reports that they're going to have a number of these world leaders that are going to all be coming together, and it is just this is the result of actual true leadership out of the White House. I did want to play some audio CPAC. This is kind of fun audio while Trump did touch on a number of really serious issues, including the real serious, meaningful actions to go after the drug cartels. He did have a little bit of fun at the event, which he oftentimes does, particularly with a friendly audience, talking about Joe Biden.
Sleepy Joe. Got to stay with Crooked. He had one ability that I didn't have. He could do something that I couldn't do. I don't say that because he was a horrible golfer. Remember, he challenged me during the debate to a golf match? He said, I'm a 6 handicap. I said, you're not a 36 handicap. He said, he's a 6. And then he said, well, I'm 8. Remember? I said, that was quick. Picked up 2 strokes. He said, no, I'm an 8, but he's not a 36 handicap, but he had one ability that was amazing. He could go with cameras on him, television, fake news on him, probably because he knows they wouldn't cover it badly. They covered him as well as you can cover him. How the hell can you cover the guy well? But he had this incredible ability. He could barely walk in the sand. Somebody thought he looked great in a bathing suit. And he'd walk in the sand pulling a thing that weighed about 6 ounces. You know those aluminum? See, aluminum's very good. It's meant for children and very old people to lift, right? So he would put it down, and he'd put it down, and he'd fall into it, and he'd immediately fall asleep in front of the media. I could never do that. That's the only thing. That's the only thing. I could never do it. No, he was Sleepy Joe, but he was crooked as hell. There's no question. He was a sleepy, crooked guy. Terrible, terrible president. He was the worst president in the history of our country. I don't care. I'll say it. Jimmy Carter passed away recently, and he passed away a happy man. He was a happy man when he passed away because he said that it's not even close. Joe was the worst, and believe me, I have to clean up the mess. I'm cleaning up the mess, and it is a mess on the border with inflation. Could go over every single thing he touched turned to shit, okay? Everything. That's true.
A lighter moment during the CPAC event. Another I thought was just really funny that, of course, the media went crazy over Elon Musk. So Milei, the president of Argentina, gifted Elon Musk with a chainsaw, cutting government, and Musk donned it, and he was just really all over the stage, and it's just so horrifying. And that actually was the part of when Milei was running for president of Argentina. That was part of his campaign theme. He would go around with a chainsaw, noting that we need much more than just a scalpel. We have to have a chainsaw in order to take care of the spending problem. And of course, the Argentina economy has turned around in ways that most people believed was completely unimaginable. I do have to note to that point, before we get another break in here, the contradictory messages of the Democrats. On one hand, we continue to hear Democrats in the media say, we're not against cuts, but, I mean, you can't come after it with a hatchet. We just, you've got to be smart about it. We can't do these massive cuts. That's all. I mean, we're for smart, cuts in a smart, strategic way, but not taking an axe to it. But then on the other hand, they dismiss the Doge findings of misspent dollars by talking about how small they are. Well, now, I mean, you guys only found 70 million over here, or you only found 120 billion over there. I mean, that's only 0.01% of the economy. So, they contradict themselves on one hand, claiming that really there isn't any great saving success here because the amount is so small. But on the other hand, they talk about the incredible mass confusion and taking a chainsaw to everything, and that's just total madness. As usual, talking out both sides of their mouth. Was that a TikTok video of Vance and his wife? Was that you had sent me?
Oh, yeah, it was.
I don't know how many of you saw it, but there was somebody, it was probably a mom of a Girl Scout. The Girl Scouts, they will set up usually outside a convenience store, Walmart oftentimes, grocery stores. And a mother started filming because J.D. Vance and his wife, were the kids there too?
They could have been, but I just know I saw.
They were dressed down.
Yeah.
I mean, totally. She was like wearing a kind of a gray T-shirt, and they were just look like any other unassuming couple, and buying Girl Scout cookies. And I thought to myself, what a difference it is between the elites and the one of us is when you see the Vances and that captured on film versus when Michelle Obama, when the Obama administration told the AP that she was going to be incognito shopping at Target. You remember that? Mm-hmm. And they were there to take pictures of her, and she was wearing sunglasses, like she was just like us, and but she didn't want to be noticed, even though they called the Associated Press to let them know she was going to be there. It's the difference between authentic, normal people versus those trying to play one on TV. Glenn Beck's next. I'm Nick Reed.